Highly professional start to the video. um, this stuff's brilliant, by the way. Eastern White Pine Elixir. I have been taking it for 2 years. It's a white pine extract. I think it has a little bit of vodka in there. That's probably why I feel better after I have it. But it's just meant to like help with that thing that happened 5 years ago. The medical thing, you know. I haven't had that thing. This is another topic, but still feeling, yeah, feeling a lot of bad health effects. It's totally another topic, isn't it? This isn't some magical lizard fucking thing. It's just I do that to try to minimize how terrible I look. Just the bags under the eyes. You know, their health has really declined, sadly to say. I don't know how you guys are coping out there. I try to cope with strange humour. You can see it the last 2 videos I posted. I got this duck I go down to talk to. I call him Jerry Toll Senior, like that Chosen One guy who was missed. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, you know, but he's like having this effect with the targeted individual thing where he's like painting it in a different light, and you know, such people are allowed to get all the views, and you know, they're not going to have a big fucking grey beard like this, I'll tell you that. You know, these healthy gym going targeted individuals, I'd have to wonder, you know. I wouldn't imagine Jerry Toll fucking Jr. is going through what I went through. But yeah, you know, I just have a bit of fun with him. I just go on down to the river and I talk like Terry Joel Jr. to him, and yeah, it cheers me up a little bit. It might be seen as toxic, I don't know. I don't know how we're meant to cope in this, you know. We're being silenced, we're being ignored, you know. It's like narcissistic abuse from those in power, you know, the governor-narcissist, and you know, we're never listened to, our claims are never investigated, blah blah blah. You know, how are we meant to behave in this? I still believe humour is a good way to convey unpalatable, you know, abuses and things in society. Even though it's hard to do while you're being tortured, you know, it is hard to be a tortured artist. It's a literal term, you know. It's been a bad time for the lungs with the spraying, you know, just coughing up a lot of stuff. But yeah, man, tortured artist. Like, I was very creative before all this. Sorry for speaking a bit loud for this camera's audio. I try to consider people and get, you know, I don't want to scream and shout at people. Sometimes I am really emotional, and justifiably so, but I know people who had you know, anyone who's really been fucked up by this program, targeted individual program, your nervous system's going to be fucked for a long time. You know, easily triggerable. So I try to bear that in mind. Shit, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, tortured artist, man. That really had mused. I had mused that term for a long time. You know, it's literal, isn't it? Sometimes, and you know how it is with highly creative people. Oh, like their wiki page, if they've managed to get famous, will be like, oh, they had that schizophrenic phase, and then we don't know what happened. They just kind of went downhill from there and lost their spark or their creativity. You know, I think I know what may have happened. You're never going to see that on wiki though, are you? But yeah, what I was going to just make a short video about was, I don't know how many people are aware of this. It's probably deliberately been kept on the down low, but there's World Brain-Computer Interface Forum conference on the 28th of July, and what a brilliant place that would have been to have a targeted individual protest, you know. I'm sure they would have had their goons, the security teams or whatever. that would have been a good place to have a crack at getting the awareness out, you know. Just trying to think which way I'll go here with this, but I would have loved to be there in a monkey suit, just trying to be a comedic, satirical kind of guy. Like I would have loved being there in my Jose Delgado monkey suit with a sign saying, go easy with your stimasiva, Delgado. I don't deserve this shit. This isn't curing schizophrenia. This is causing it. I would have loved to have been there in that suit with that sign, but it's too late, I went on the targeted individual groups and I looked around and no one's aware of it. The only way I came across it, for some reason, who knows why we think what we do or whatever, but I looked in brain-computer interface torture or something in Facebook. I think I googled that and then I came across this brain-computer interface group, and I saw that forum thing pop up, and this was about 2 days ago, and tried to leave a comment, and my comment got greyed out, and it needed approval and just another censoring. It wouldn't have been allowed up because I was saying this technology is used to like covertly torture people, allegedly, if I've got to say that for YouTube. But this is the thing, isn't it? This is another tangent to go down. Like, we never allowed all the pieces to prove our thing, and then we will be done for like defamation, false accusations, and they can hide behind this faceless machine, and we can never be able to 100% prove it. But yeah, I know people are like jaded and all that. There are some people that really tried to protest, like, Downing Street protests and that. Respect, man. Big time respect. Like, those are the people I want to know. This whole thing, seems to have been hijacked to all this chosen one spiritual talk. It's fair enough to have that. I don't want to be a villain or rip on everyone. Like, I see how people benefit from belief in God. They really thrive on that, thrive off that. It helps fuel them and sustain them. Some TIs who are real targeted people, real ones, getting fucked up by a machine, by these experimental non-lethal, frequency weapons and stuff. They're thriving still, they're able to do great things, and that's beautiful, but my problem is this targeted individual term has been seized by the chosen one people, and they talk about it all in a spiritual thing, and they don't mention the actual technologies. And I do strongly suspect that many of them, probably the majority, aren't being tortured. They just look too healthy. They don't even sound traumatized, It greatly irks me and aggrieves me that they stole or claimed, maybe they're all manipulated, maybe we all are, but they're allowed to have all these tens of thousands of views, right, and they're talking about all this chosen one stuff and using targeted individuals and gang stalking and all that. It's obviously a deliberate ploy by the system to diminish, and massively, like, reframe what it is, to hide, in order to hide that grimy techno side, Karl Clark boots on the ground, cause stalking, proper Zezetsang, proper brutal, ugly decomposition, of a person. You can't just say, oh, victim mindset, raise your vibration, all this carry on, when, you got like the perpetual high-pitched sound, ringing in your head, EMFs to the head continuously, I got a grey spot on the top of my head since a year after that tinnitus started up. For me, that says everything. I would love to address a conference full of benevolent psychologists and say, explain that one away, The cause stalking, the high-pitched sounds from the neighbour, militarised guy, meth head. I'm not a meth head, he was. You know, as soon as he gets evicted, the high-pitched sound starts up. After like 8 months of massive harassment, the high-pitched sound starts up, and then a year later, you know, or a few months to a year, I can't remember, man, but the grey spot starts up. Like, how the fuck do they explain that away? They could say like, oh, you know, you had this psychosis delusion, and you know, the psychosomatic power of the mind, and all this kind of carry on, I guess, but you know, we'll never be allowed to address the moral good psychologists and psychiatrists, if there are any there, but I think there are good psychologists. I'm not sure about psychiatry though. Like, you know, I've said it before, there's no excuse not to listen to people, research what they're saying. I try to not be a cynical bastard and just say they all know, you know, how could they not? I would have known. If I was in that field when I was at university, I would have been like, oh, what did Delgado do now? What did Jose Del... No, what did he really do? I don't care what you guys are saying. They didn't shut that down. I would have got on the equivalent of Yandex, or, you know, the internet was the Wild West back then. I would have been looking it up. You know, what did they really do? And then I probably would have got course stalked out of the, you know, out of graduating my degree, probably. It seems to be, you know, they try to like nip it in the bud if you're a, you know, relatively like righteous person wanting to know the truth and, you know, not go along with things. But yeah, that Brain Computer Interface Forum, the 28th of July, Boulder, Colorado, that's where it is. It's only, what is it, pretty much bloody tomorrow, isn't it? Those are my people who would acknowledge the 3D shit that's going on. I'm not feeling all this like Matrix talk and the simulation and all this. So what? What difference does it make, man? You know, I hit myself in the arm with this pen, it hurts. It doesn't matter if it's simulated code and blah blah whatever, you know. What difference does it make? It seems like a cop-out. Another way we're kind of like, you know, duped into indifference. I guess, you know, if you're in the Matrix, you can kind of think, you know, that you can like do all that magical thinking and like manifest and all this kind of stuff. But those aren't my people anyway. Like, you know, if I ever had a community of people around me, I would want them to be aware of the 3D shit, the 3D evil people. I would expect them as my friend because I am a Delgado monkey, you know, literally, man. Like, I don't get a surgical fucking implant, but I believe I got remotely chipped, you know, and this grey spot on right in the top of the head there suggests that, you know, and I want my friends to come with me and protest, you know, at this conference. And I wouldn't go there alone because the danger of the psych reprisal, but I wouldn't expect anyone to go there alone. It's just dangerous and, you know, it's brutal. You're just going to get intimidated and probably punished, tortured later on when you get home, you know, the frequency shit will ramp up. But they really do punish us, you know, after that, after you successfully break out of that TI echo chamber that's induced with algorithm, you know. You try to post out into a different group, like of psychologists or whatever, and, you know, I've experienced it time and again. The asset stripping, they come nick the car or the home window fucking blows out or something. Expensive, you know, asset stripping every time. Every time I've like had a success in reaching a bunch of people. But you know, this is the last thing society ever does, is like real boots on the ground activism. There's a lady, Kirsty Burke. She's like a deconstructing from Christianity and channel. she's very active, doing her activism, and every video, well, not every video, every other video I see of hers where she's getting really tenacious about human rights crimes, about what ICE are doing to the immigrants. I try to drop in a thing about targeted individuals, and they're doing that to Americans, legal citizens. They're fucking with them, doing the, you know, the Zuzetsang on them, all sorts of horrendous things, and they don't even give a fuck, eh? They're all about Trump. Trump's doing this, you know? Doesn't matter if it was Trump or Biden or Obama or Bush or Clinton. This shit happened regardless, you know? Yeah, that's another thing that bugs me. Just barely anyone gives a fuck about this thing. They just think we're all crazy. Let's check that's still going. Yeah, it's just, you know, protesting about this stuff, that's the last thing that ever happens, man. It's a shame. I know people think, you know, they're all, you know, they're NPCs, they're under a spell, and still would have felt like great having a crack, you know, just like with those medical protests years ago. It felt great at those protests, you know. Maybe it was just a bunch of like-minded people, you know, getting some sort of like validation or whatever, but it felt great. Didn't achieve anything, but it felt good. I still wonder the sorts of people, you know, that, sorry, I just got an itchy ear, that wasn't any sort of towel. Yeah, I still wonder the sorts of people who work on this technology. Maybe there are some good, naive people, you know, these left brain people that, I try to come from the heart, you know, like sometimes it's hard when you're very traumatized that you met with this, you know, the Jimmy Carr deadpan, like, well, what are you talking about? Like the, you know, the British comedian, he does that expert deadpan sort of comedy. You met with that, you know, time and again, and it's very frustrating. But, yeah, and you just, you see them all as these corrupt, blah, 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 but, you know, we've been way down the abuse rabbit hole. We're like the, well, you might not see yourself like this, I do. The Delgado monkey, it's just the most accurate depiction of my life, the last 9 years. Yeah, the Delgado monkey. And only two people really knew what was going on there, Delgado and the monkey, and no one believed the monkey, you know, and Delgado never admitted it. And it's obviously tippity top secret, right? And they got all these non-disclosure agreements and everything, and maybe there are teams of scientists, they're working away on their little thing, their little cubicle, and they have the heart of gold, you know, maybe they do want to like help humanity, but they just, you know, indoctrinated. They don't believe that it'll be used for evil, that, you know, people in power are that evil. Maybe the people at this BCI, Brain Computer Interface Forum, World Conference thing, happens once a year. Maybe they are all benevolent, or most of them, you know. I'm sure the top of the pyramid of that organisation, and every organisation isn't benevolent, but maybe most of them are. I wouldn't suggest anyone goes there alone. That would probably be dangerous, you know, psych reprisal potentially. But it'd feel damn good if 50 people turning up and protesting, obviously non-violent, but getting mildly emotional about it, you know, moderately, as much as you're allowed to without them, you know, saying they're out of control and all that carry on. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Just thought I'd mention it. You know, I just stumbled across this by chance, this thing on Facebook, the Brain Computer Interface thing. Tried to leave some comments, you know, some other TI had left a comment there. I can't remember what the page was called, just Brain Computer Interface, like forum or something, or, you know, it had been shared around a few places, the post. Yeah, by the way, like, I'm sorry if my humour, attempted humour, strange humour, uh, attempted art, if that offends anyone, but this is just my way of coping. I still maintain art and humour are far more palatable than, you know, just talking about it can't even say that word, can you? Straight shoe to, you know, straight and direct. I think that's a bad way because it's just too ugly. People, I tried it. People just defriend you. You know, I lost a dozen friends on Facebook. Um, you know, that's why I kind of thought, oh, these slow, you know, snail's pace awareness by art. That it's damn hard to get any high quality artistic thing done when you're continually, you know, brain disrupted. Um, what a great Zuzet that is as well, you know. I was going to do a Zuzet video, but I was just having some issues health wise. um, but what a perfectly refined thing, you know, that you're able to like manipulate people's brains and nervous system, you know, directly. Like, never mind all this other stuff, like, you know, noise and everything, and you're able to like manipulate families against each other. I still think the remote brain hacking is a thing. You know, my own family, as soon as I started doing more, I was at my peak of creativity and writing, the family just ramped up their shit, you know. They really ramped it up, and then the meth head neighbour moved in and it all kicked off from there. Oh yeah, one other thing I'll mention is you go on Yandex and you type in like YouTube electronic harassment or whatever, you know, that kind of stuff. Excuse me. The Yandex browser, I mean, the Russian one. Sorry, just bloated. You're going to find all these old targeted individual videos that are totally different from all this Chosen One spiritual stuff, you know. The gritty, raw, you know, Romola D, Vulcan Wolverine, I still watch him as a comfort, you know, comfort cope, I admit it. Very lonely life, you know. I sometimes drift off to sleep to one of his videos. Have a lot in common with him, you know, the writing and the neighbour and all that stuff. But yeah, you know, those videos are buried. They used to have a lot of views, like 50,000 views kind of thing, 70,000 views. Not Vulcans, but some other channels. There's just no channels like that anymore, you know. They're not allowed to build momentum like they used to be able to. Yeah, if anyone's interested, there's one called United TIs, spelled lowercase United TIS. Or it may have been TIS United, I can't remember which one, but lovely, very strong Russian woman, very brave, you know, a true strong independent woman. That's the kind of channel, that's what I relate to, that's what I consider a targeted individual, you know. Getting messed up with these technologies, you know, being proper stalked and all that. Proper traumatized, you know, proper damaged. You know, political. That's what I consider it anyway. But yeah, you know, check out her channel if you like. I don't know. It just feels like we've been broken and scattered, and it's been reframed. This is it over here. This kind of like rosy, you know, beautiful version of it, and the ugly, you know, political Zuzetsang thing has kind of been buried, sadly. I guess I'll leave it there, you know. And it's very hard to know how to be in this, you know, how to behave. Even Jesus didn't get covertly fucked up and gaslighted by everyone and told to turn to Jesus and humble himself and all this. So we don't really even have any role models, you know. Jesus' persecution was overt as far as I know. Overt, you know, it wasn't buried and hidden and all that. He didn't get gaslighted and told he was crazy, you know. Maybe he did, but he didn't get told that the cross wasn't there and everything, you know. Not saying I'm Jesus, I'm just saying it's like we don't have role models that have been through this as far as I know. So, I'm certainly not Jesus, I'm a sinner, you know, I'm just a middle of the road in that respect in terms of sin. But yeah, you know, we all cope with it in different ways. The religion spirituality, it really didn't help me, it grieved me if anything. I still see it as a big stumbling block in trying to get awareness about this techno side. It's a pretty decent word, this MK Ultra technology, you know, trying to get awareness about that out there. It's a big stumbling block, and yeah, I just cope with some of my strange humour and stuff, and I know we get the humour beaten out of us, and some people never had it to begin with, but you know, I try to get a bit of it back, because that's what I used to be about, satires and comedy. I used to be a funny guy, you know. I think they hate humour, these abusers. They hate to be made fun of, especially. That's going to cop you some so-called revenge, you know, if you make fun of them. I timed that pretty well. I can only go for half an hour and it shuts off. That's why I keep getting up to check. But yeah, they really hate humour, you know. You see how they went after the comedians. They're only allowing the sort of so-called woke comedy now, from what I hear. I don't really keep up with any of that anymore, but they really don't like humour and comedy that can make things more palatable for society to digest, you know. They don't like that kind of stuff. Like, they wouldn't allow, for instance, I'm pretty sure someone like, you know, on a major, like, you know, major fucking comedy stand-up thing talking about like brain-computer interfaces and making jokes about transhuman torture and stuff. I don't think that would fly. I don't think that would be allowed. It's not nice either, don't get me wrong, it's not funny, but it's just trying to get it out there that people would be willing to consider and talk about it, you know. I had an idea about a deck of targeted individual playing cards as well. That's another topic. Psychiatry's most and least wanted. You know, half the deck would be like Dr. James Giordano, Jose Delgado type people, you know. A little animated picture of the person and a little blurb about them. You know, maybe something else, not sure, but and then the other half will be like psychiatry's most wanted. It will be us, your targeted individuals, and you know, 25 TIs and 25 of the credible scientist people. You know, they'd be psychiatry's least wanted because they don't want to ever acknowledge them, and then we'd be the most wanted. You know, and 25 TIs and a little blurb about each one of them. And I got 45 seconds, I've got a minute left, I think. But yeah, I thought that would be a good way to spread awareness. It'd be offensive probably to people, I'm sure of it. But, you know, normies would find it funny to have a drinking game and play their cards and have a bit of banter about it at least. Yeah, I thought that'd be a good way to get the awareness out, and I don't know, it'd be a big project, and you know, probably never get it done. It was just a thought. Anyway, time's about up on this one. I'll leave it there, I guess.